Good morning, everyone. Adam Livingston here, your dearest Bitcoin wizard. You know, ever since my video on 21 Capital, I have had lots of ideas bumping around in this noggin regarding Tether and its impact on Bitcoin's eventual monetary takeover. I then saw Saifedean's speech at Bitcoin 2025, and it mirrored a lot of the thoughts that I had, and it was brilliantly articulated. I'll link his speech in the description. I highly recommend it. That said, this is an expansion of my thoughts. I hope you find them entertaining or useful. The most profound monetary inversions do not occur through revolution, but through mimicry. Consider the Tether mechanism. Ostensibly designed as a digital wrapper for fiat stability, it has become the most efficient Bitcoin accumulation engine in human history. This is not an accident, this is monetary thermodynamics in action. Every system seeks equilibrium, but monetary systems are fundamentally different. They operate under Gresham's law in reverse when hard money enters the equation. Bad money drives out good only when legal tender laws enforce artificial exchange rates. Remove those constraints as digital currencies do, and the superior monetary technology inevitably absorbs the inferior one. Tether represents the critical phase transition point, the moments when dollar demand transforms into Bitcoin accumulation, without the participants consciously choosing a side in a monetary war. They believe they are escaping their collapsing local currencies into dollar stability. In reality, they are funding Bitcoin's final monetization. Saifedean's calculations reveal the profound asymmetry at the heart of this system. Even in the most optimistic scenarios, Tether growing 100-fold to $20 trillion, deploying 80% into treasuries, the impact on U.S. fiscal dynamics remains marginal. A $3.7 trillion reduction in debt service costs over a decade against a debt trajectory exceeding $100 trillion is noise, not signal. But examine the inverse flow. That same growth trajectory allocates approximately $4 trillion into Bitcoin over the same period. The US debt market at $37 trillion absorbs this treasury demand with minimal price discovery improvement. Bitcoin at a $2 trillion market cap experiences violent upward pressure with each marginal inflow. This creates a mathematical inevitability. Dollar-denominated treasury purchases provide linear, diminishing returns to the issuer. Bitcoin purchases generate exponential compounding returns to the holder. One system experiences entropy, the other experiences negentropy. The critical insight is that Tether operates as a monetary transformer. It converts dollar demand into Bitcoin accumulation at a structural exchange rate that favors Bitcoin over time. Every new unit of Tether creation generates dual pressures, marginal treasury demand and concentrated Bitcoin buying, with radically asymmetric impacts. The true genius of the Tether system does not lie in its technology, but in its political positioning. It offers emerging market actors a pathway to dollar liquidity without dollar dependency. Consider the strategic calculus for BRICS nations. Traditional dollar access requires correspondent banking relationships subject to sanctions, SWIFT system compliance vulnerable to weaponization, treasury holdings subject to seizure, and political subordination to U.S. foreign policy objectives. Tether-mediated dollar access provides immediate liquidity without correspondent banking, peer-to-peer settlements bypassing all SWIFT surveillance, custody models resistant to unilateral seizure, and political neutrality in monetary transactions. But the second-order effect is much more profound. Nations accessing dollars through Tether automatically gain exposure to Bitcoin appreciation through Tether's balance sheet composition. They consume dollar liquidity while accumulating Bitcoin reserves by proxy. This is the sovereign arbitrage trade. Tether for short-term dollar liquidity needs while its Bitcoin reserves provide long-term store of value protection. China restricts Bitcoin directly but permits Tether usage. Russia explores Tether for international trade despite Bitcoin skepticism. Each transaction strengthens Bitcoin's monetary position while providing temporary dollar utility. The system's true power emerges through reflexive loops that compound over time. Loop 1 is balance sheet inversion. Tether accumulates Bitcoin as treasury management. Bitcoin appreciates faster than dollar-denominated assets. Bitcoin percentage of reserves increases, and Tether's security becomes Bitcoin dependent, not treasury dependent. The second loop is demand transformation. Users seek dollar stability, receive Bitcoin exposure. Bitcoin appreciation improves Tether's reserve quality. Higher reserve quality increases Tether adoption. More adoption creates more Bitcoin accumulation. Loop number 3 is regulatory pressure. U.S. regulators view Tether as systemic macroeconomic risk. Regulatory threats accelerate Bitcoin allocation. Bitcoin allocation reduces treasury dependence, and reduced treasury dependence increases regulatory resistance. And then loop number 4 is the peg inversion. Bitcoin reserves exceed treasury reserves in value. Tether can revalue upward while maintaining stability. Upward revaluation attracts more capital, and capital inflows accelerate Bitcoin accumulation. Each loop reinforces all of the other loops, creating what systems theorists call a positive feedback cascade. The system moves toward Bitcoin denomination not through planned transition, but through the mathematical inevitability of superior monetary technology absorbing inferior alternatives. The most underappreciated aspect of this transition is the silent shift in what constitutes risk-free collateral. For decades, U.S. Treasuries served as the global risk-free assets, the foundation upon which all other financial instruments were priced and secured. But collateral quality is not determined by government decree. It emerges from market practice, institutional adoption, and crisis performance. Bitcoin's characteristics, fixed supply, global accessibility, seizure resistance, 24/7 settlement, increasingly align with institutional collateral requirements better than sovereign debt. Tether accelerates this transition by demonstrating Bitcoin's collateral superiority in practice. When treasury assets face seizure risk, Bitcoin reserves provide continuity. When treasury yields lag inflation, Bitcoin appreciation maintains purchasing power. When treasury markets close, Bitcoin markets operate continuously. Financial institutions observe these dynamics and adjust accordingly. BlackRock offers Bitcoin ETFs, Strategy implements Bitcoin treasury strategy, nation-states explore Bitcoin reserves. Each adoption validates Bitcoin's collateral status while eroding treasury dominance. The tipping point arrives when market participants begin pricing risk relative to Bitcoin rather than the treasuries. This is not a conscious decision, it emerges organically as Bitcoin's superior characteristics become impossible to ignore. We approach what can only be described as a monetary singularity, the point at which Bitcoin's monetary characteristics become so superior to existing alternatives that adoption accelerates beyond institutional control. Tether serves as that critical bridging mechanism. It provides familiar dollar-denominated stability while quietly exposing users to Bitcoin's monetary properties. Users who would never consciously choose Bitcoin adoption find themselves with Bitcoin exposure through Tether's balance sheet. This is monetary evolution through the back door. No dramatic announcements, no political declarations, no revolutionary manifestos. Simply the quiet mathematical process of superior money absorbing inferior money through market mechanisms. The end state is not Bitcoin winning against the dollar in some grand confrontation. It is Bitcoin becoming the natural unit of account as market participants discover that Bitcoin-denominated thinking provides superior economic calculation. The United States faces an impossible choice regarding Tether. Embracing Tether provides short-term treasury demand and fiscal relief, but that same embrace accelerates long-term dollar displacement through Bitcoin accumulation. Attacking Tether through regulatory seizure or sanctions eliminates treasury demand while validating Bitcoin's seizure-resistant properties. Every frozen treasury asset demonstrates Bitcoin's superiority as neutral, unseizable collateral. This is the policy paradox of declining monetary hegemony. Every action to defend dollar dominance either proves Bitcoin's superiority or accelerates Bitcoin adoption. The treasury trap is real and inescapable. Money's value emerges from network effects. The more people use a monetary medium, the more valuable it becomes to additional users. Tether creates the most powerful network effect cascade in monetary history. Individuals use Tether for dollar stability. Merchants accept Tether for payment simplicity, institutions hold Tether for liquidity management, and nations use Tether for trade settlement. But the network effect extends beyond Tether itself. Every Tether user becomes familiar with digital wallets management, private key security, blockchain transition mechanics, cryptocurrency exchange interfaces, and decentralized finance concepts. These skills transfer directly to Bitcoin usage. Tether will serve as Bitcoin's training wheels, introducing hundreds of millions to cryptocurrency fundamentals while building the human capital necessary for Bitcoin adoption. When the monetary transition accelerates, this trained user base provides the adoption foundation. No learning curve, no technical barriers, no unfamiliarity with digital monetary systems. Central banks also face an impossible equation. How do you compete with a monetary system that combines the stability of the world's reserve currency with exposure to the world's hardest money? Traditional monetary policy tools, interest rate adjustments, quantitative easing, forward guidance, assume control over money supply and demand. demand. But Tether operates outside traditional monetary policy transmission mechanisms while providing superior monetary services. Central banks cannot offer 24/7 global settlement, seizure-resistant reserves, inflation-resistant store of value, permissionless access, or programmatic monetary policy. Tether provides all of these through its hybrid dollar-Bitcoin structure. It offers the world a monetary system superior to anything governments can create, manage, or control. The mathematics of this system point toward an inevitable endgame. Bitcoin becomes the world's dominant monetary system, not through political revolution, but through economic evolution. Tether serves as the transition mechanism, allowing gradual adoption without forcing immediate abandonment of dollar-denominated thinking. Users maintain dollar unit of account while gaining Bitcoin's store of value properties. Over time, as Bitcoin's price appreciates and treasury yields remain suppressed, Tether's balance sheet inverts completely. At that point, maintaining the dollar peg becomes economically irrational. Why peg to a depreciating asset when you could float against an appreciating one? The peg breaks upward, Tether begins trading at a premium to the dollar. Other stablecoins follow, the dollar loses its role as the stable reference point for digital currencies. This is currency collapse functioning as currency evolution. The dollar continues to exist, continues to be used, continues to be accepted, but it gradually becomes subordinate to Bitcoin as the economy's primary monetary coordinator. The most successful revolutions are the ones the victims never see coming. The dollar's displacement by Bitcoin occurs not through dramatic confrontation, but through quiet mathematical inevitability. Tether represents this mechanism by which this transition occurs, a Trojan horse that appears to strengthen dollar demand while actually accelerating Bitcoin monetization. Every dollar that flows into Tether seeking stability contributes to Bitcoin's march toward monetary dominance. The revolution is not coming, it is here, operating in plain sight, disguised as a stablecoin. The only question is whether policymakers will recognize the transition before it becomes irreversible. By the time they do, I think the mathematical momentum will be unstoppable. Superior money always drives out inferior money when artificial constraints are removed. Tether removed these constraints while maintaining the illusion of dollar stability. The result is the most elegant monetary transition in human history. The world chooses Bitcoin without knowing it, one Tether transaction at a time. The curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they really know about what they imagine they can design. The Tether system demonstrates that the most profound monetary designs are not designed at all. They emerge from the mathematical interaction of superior monetary technology with human needs for stability, liquidity, and freedom. Bitcoin's monetization through Tether proves that evolution, not revolution, remains the most powerful force in monetary history. My name is Adam Livingston. I am the Bitcoin Wizard. If you enjoyed this content, please like this video and subscribe to the channel in order to support my work. If you own Bitcoin, you are participating in the greatest wealth transfer in human history. Let me know what you'd like me to cover next by leaving a comment. Class dismissed.